Welcome everyone to the inaugural 2010-2011 exhibition at the Searveld Gallery. Just a reminder that you guys all need to, students, sign in. And then another reminder that SARS is coming up in a month. And if you have no idea what SARS is, you need to make sure to ask your professor. But basically it includes you trying to, as fast as you can, introduce yourself and your work to the rest of your students. Today, one more thing. There's another exhibition happening out in the halls here. Two students, I believe one's a freshman and one's a sophomore. Yasmin Fernandez and Melissa Demag. Okay. Melissa's a freshman, so kudos to the freshman initiative. All the rest of you, you're now going to be playing catch up for the rest of your time here. So good luck. Anyway, I'm super pleased to introduce today our guest and the artist in the show, the current show, my friend Ben Fosch. He's a graduate from the Art Institute in 1999, shown at numerous places around Chicago, including the Hyde Park Arts Center, Gallery 40,000, Dig Gallery, and I'm forgetting a couple others. He was also a big part of the Art Ledge scene, which he might tell you a little bit about, I'm not sure. But give a big round of applause to Ben, and thanks so much, Ben, for being with us.
All right. Okay, great. Okay. Well, my name is Ben Fosch. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Very excited. I worked up a little slide lecture here, and it will kind of just go through my history. It'll start about 2005, which starts with Art Ledge. Title of the show is Maybe She's Born With It. I'm sure there'll be questions. I'll answer those at the end of the lecture. That's what we'll end with. So this is the first image, and this is Art Ledge. This is an image. It was an apartment gallery in Chicago run by Brandon Elvendia and Caleb Lyons. And it was Caleb's apartment, and he had this weird little non-usable ledge in his apartment, and he decided to have art exhibitions. And so it was right at the top of this spiral staircase. And then so that's if you're standing upstairs, and the ledge is right around the corner, and that's the ledge. So I'll go back. What I did for this piece was I wanted to pinstripe the walls. I don't know if you can tell in this image, but they're 1/2 inch by 1/8 inch stripes hand painted on the wall. And that took about 80 hours to do in a week on a deadline. And that light fixture is a funny light fixture. It was always there, but a lot of people thought it was a sculpture. Once I painted the pinstripes on the wall, it really made it activate. It was kind of just a bizarre thing. So anyways, I pinstriped the walls, and all those walls, they all intersect at 45-degree angles. And then this little, well, I call it a remnant, is if you took the walls of the space and opened them up flat, and I put the same technique on that object. And it was available for sale, and if you bought it, then it turned into a painting. So in the show, it's a sculpture, and then if you collect it, it hangs on the wall like a little mini Frank Stella painting. This is a second show I did, maybe a year following, which is their Thomas Kincaid puzzle tables. And this is at Gallery 40,000. I have a detail. This is the only images that I have for this particular piece. There was actually 10 puzzle tables, and each puzzle was 1,000 pieces, so it was 10,000 pieces, and that was, again, made on a deadline. I think I had three puzzles done and 3 tables built, and the organizers of the show saw them, we're like, oh, these are great, but we need more of them. Like, we want to do a 2-person show, and we want 10 of them. I was like, okay, yeah, sure, no problem. They were like, it's like in 2 months. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, no problem. So over the Christmas holiday, me and my girlfriend and my brother spent all our time putting puzzles together, which was actually kind of fun. And the weird thing about this piece, the weird experience for me was that it got received as being kind of really cold analytical work, but actually the process of putting these puzzles together at home, like with family, ended up being a really warm experience, which is a very kind of strange contrast, because there was a guy at the show that actually was really angry at these works, so much that he came and he put his hands on the tables, and it was just like kind of breathing, and everybody was like, hey, Ben, there's this guy, I think he doesn't really like your work. I walked over and talked to him, and I was like, is everything okay? He just didn't say anything. The guy that runs the space asked if I wanted to kick him out, and I was like, no, that's fine, just leave him. So that's that. Oh, so let me talk a little bit about one of the concerns here, artistically and formally, is I was trying to find an object that both required a lot of labor, but that you couldn't really show off that labor. Like, I was looking for an unskilled labor, and I was also looking for an object that could both be an image and an object. And I thought a puzzle was just kind of a perfect thing, because it's very much an object, but it's flat, which contrasts with this piece, which a lot of labor, but you definitely know that it's a skilled labor, and that was something I wanted to avoid. So I did this. So meantime, in my studio, I'm working on paintings like these, which are very different, or at least they feel very different to me. They're more kind of just straight abstract paintings, made with a house roller, like the objects in the gallery. And then this is another show. This was at Von Zweck. It's another apartment gallery. And this piece kind of requires even more explanation. There was a group show that was organized by Yutaka Sone. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him, but he's kind of a big New York artist. And he was having a show at the Renaissance Society, and we were helping install that show. And while we were installing that show, which was an insane show to install, he wanted to have a show with all the people that were helping him install the show. And there were a ton of us, maybe 8 of us. And so he organized with one of the artists that was working there, also ran an alternative art space out of his apartment. And so we had this show. And the piece that I did was I brought these 3 athletic balls and had everybody sign the balls. Because there was kind of like an interesting power dynamic between the artists that were working for the show and this big famous artist that was having the show, and him wanting to have a show with us at this apartment gallery. It was kind of like this strange thing, and so I wanted to play with that. And he thought of it as it being this kind of team spirit thing. So I named the piece Team Player, and I brought the balls and had everybody that was involved sign them. So it ranges from lesser known artists to greater known artists. But the thing for me now is, like, now I own these balls and they're my work, but I feel like I can't really I could never sell them, because then it would kind of it would make me exploit him, if that makes sense. Like, I own his signature as my work. That kind of comes into play in my later work, which I'll talk about later. Okay. So this is the piece I did for Hyde Park Art Center. This is, when is this? 2008? Yeah, 2008. The show opened in November of 2008. And the show was not just another pretty face, which is a benefit auction that they do with a theme of portraiture. So what I proposed was, I had built South America and brought it to see if they were interested in it, and they liked the idea. The idea being, I wanted to build a map of the world where every country was its own shaped panel, and could be purchased at a 1 to $1 billion ratio of GDP. So whatever a country's worth in terms of their gross domestic product, I would divide that, and then it would be a dollar ratio. So some countries were free, actually. All you had to do was sign up, and it was on there. The price was zero. It was worth less than $1 billion, so it was just zero. And you could just have that country for free. And most countries probably range in between the $20 to $100 range. And then some countries, the most expensive being the US, was $12,360. It didn't sell. Okay, so Hyde Park Art Center's job then was to try and pre-sell these countries, and they were customizable. If you wanted to buy one, you could buy one, and you could have them painted whatever color you wanted. And they didn't sell any. They sold none. So my structure was that if none sold, then or the ones that didn't sell would just be painted black, and then they'd be available at the opening if anybody wanted to buy them. But they couldn't sell even one, and a lot of them were worth $1 or $2 or even free. They couldn't manage to sell one. So at the opening, oh, sorry, that's my joke. That's I forgot I put that in there. I just think it's kind of funny. Like, I don't know how I got this picture of myself. I don't know who took this. I don't even remember who took this photo. But I always thought that it just reminded me of that. Okay. So that's the opening, and it's not the greatest picture in the world, but that's where it was installed, and they were all black. And it was weird for me because it opened in November, and it opened the day of the financial collapse. And I thought there was something great about just the whole world in black because nothing sold. And it was kind of, at the time, it was really like, I was embarrassed that nothing sold. Like, it's like, geez, nothing, like not one thing sold. But then after the opening, sold 99 countries of 183 countries. So I felt pretty good about it and ended up helping to raise over $1,000 for Hyde Park Art Center. And this was one of the collectors, and she was nice enough to send me a picture of one of the piece she bought installed in her home, which I think is nice to see.
What country is that?
Democratic Republic of Congo. I think it was $39. Okay. Now this is Vegas Estates. Again, another apartment gallery in Chicago. And this was, I think this was July of last year. So it's kind of recent. I did this in collaboration with another artist. It's Chelsea Culp. And the space is a two-part space. It's a garage space and a basement space. And how they normally structure their events is they have one artist do something in the garage, another do something in the basement. And we had pitched an idea to them originally, but then changed it on them at the last minute. We were like, no, I think we're just going to do a piece where it's just both our piece. Like, I don't want to say whose piece it is because we really worked on it together. And we weren't even sure by the time, like, we weren't sure whose was what. It really became collaborative. So I'm going to skip through the garage a little bit. What we installed was, this is like a 38-inch high wall that's hung at a 58-inch center line, and it goes around the perimeter of the whole garage. That's beautiful corner view. The detail view with, to give context, it's just a white wall. It went around the door. We had to take the door off, and then it went around. I don't know why this image is so dark, but it covered they couldn't use their garage. And we kind of really liked that idea that it made it totally non-functional for them. They couldn't access it, but because it went through the door was always open, so anybody else could use it. Like, their garage was just open. And they live in Pilsen. It's not the nicest. The area, was like, they were a little like, you're just going to leave it open? It's like, well, there's nothing in there except for this wall. They let us do it, which I'm very happy about. And then, okay, so that's the garage. And then in the basement, there was this vitrine, and now this shot we took with the flash on so you could see what the basement looked like, but actually all the lights were off and the only light source was from the vitrine. And that vitrine is, imagine if that's the far corner and the only door is at the other end, the garage or the basement, the sides of the whole apartment. It's totally black. You can come in and you just see all the way at the other end this light source, and you have to walk towards it, and your eyes would adjust in this weird. It would take time to adjust. This is more what it would look like once you confronted it. And then inside are they're Peruvian burial dolls. And I found them at an estate sale from an archaeologist and bought them. Just, I don't know why, I just thought they were kind of creepy and just wanted them. And then I did some research on them, and they're actually not authentic Peruvian dolls. But they're made with authentic material. So the actual material is over 2,000 years old from ancient civilization. But they're probably made in the 1950s, 1970s. But they're also collectible as fakes because nobody makes them anymore. So they're still this kind of like local craft object that people are still interested in, and the materials are authentic. And I think that's kind of what was interesting for me in wanting to include them in the show, is this kind of strange gray zone of, well, the materials are real, but they're actually fake, but even as fakes, they're collectible. And there's a detail. And then so this contrasted, which was like this dark basement, it's underground, it's kind of cold and scary. And then in the garage, it's really like open and clean. It's this blank white space. And that show is titled Substance and Shadow, which is based on a title of a book on Cézanne. That's actually based on another book by La Fontaine that has to do with the substance and shadow. Is like what is it? I don't know. Not a fairy tale, parable, something. But it has to do with a dog on a boat, and he attacks his shadow, like because he believes it's real, but it's not. Contrast with the work, and at the same time, I'm still making these roller paintings in the studio. This might be 4 by 4 feet. And this is another image of a roller painting in the studio. And that is really big. I couldn't get far enough away to get the best picture of it. It's probably 6 by 13 feet. And it's silver, and then the primary color bars. Again, used with a roller. Oh. And then there's a white one with black bars. And then I tried to give a context shot, but it's still not doing much good. Okay, so I think after this gets us to this year. So after these paintings, I think Josh saw these paintings in the studio and maybe was impressed just by their scale, because they're kind of like overwhelming in the space. Like they look really ridiculous. And I think he also knew that I had a bunch of paintings in the studio that I've been working on, but most of the exhibitions that I had up until now, they're all kind of conceptually oriented. They don't really, it's not just my normal sort of in-studio painting practice. So he asked if I wanted to show some of those works at his space, Dig, and I said, yeah, it would be great. And so this is a picture from that show, which has a bunch of different things. The painting in the center is just a smaller roller painting that I did, where it's just black and I just rolled the edge white. And then there's another installation shot, some paintings. These paintings on the right and in the center, they come from an attempt. I was trying to figure out for myself how to divide a square. That was like the challenge I gave to myself in the studio. And I came up with this whole elaborate system. And these are examples of that system. The detail of that painting. So that's just knifed on the ground, white on black. and then I taped off the corners, and the blue and yellow are knifed on really thick, and then the magenta and green they're knifed on and then scraped off. There's another pair from that show. Edge roller paintings using the primary colors and installed in the kitchen. The nice Memphis ashtray. I don't know if you can see that on the table, but we really like that little pairing. And that work directly leads to the work in the gallery, which is here. Roller paintings, primary colors, X's. Oh. How'd that get in there? Right, that image requires me to talk more about this image. So we were just kind of playing around with how to install these works, and for whatever reason, I really liked having them all the way to the right up against the window. And I was at the time thinking of text, like right justified text. Like there's a choice to hang the work in the center of the wall. And for some reason, I just wanted to play with that expectation, and just instead of centering it, just right justified. But then this great thing happened where you could see the reflection in the window. You can kind of see it in this picture. At night, it's really intense. Like looks very deliberate. And it wasn't, and then it became deliberate after I liked it. And I liked it because it made me think of this image from Citizen Kane. It's just a classic image, classic cinematography, and I think a lot about film and frame when I make my work, even though it's kind of like, oh, in some ways it could just be abstract, but in some ways it really is about trying to adjust our relationship to the object and figure out what that object is telling us. Again, these are remainder shapes. I call them that because I had one large piece of canvas to pull these squares out of, but to buy canvas, they're almost 4 feet square, but you can only buy 6-foot canvas, so there's this 2-foot border that always gets wasted every time I build a 4-inch square. And I didn't want to waste it this time, so I bought one sheet of canvas, placed these on there in a way so that I could have these kind of interesting remainder shapes. Oh, that's right, I have a little dot. So, three squares fit here and one here. So there's 5 paintings, and these are the remainder shapes. And then I built canvases for them, stretched them, and then traced the edge with a roller. They're really fast. It took me maybe a month to build the frames, stretch the canvas, prepare the surface, and then it takes 2 seconds to make the painting. And I kind of like that. The same is true with these. So I definitely have moved from the first show where it was all about labor, and all about how much time, like very labor-intensive work, to making work that is super fast and super easy. And I think that's actually a scary space for me, which I like. One of my things when I make art is if I ever feel safe or comfortable and I know what I want to do, then I know it's time to abandon that project and do the exact opposite. And then this, same thing, just super fast. Maybe it took 5 minutes to make this. Well, it took time to prepare the surface, but to actually make the painting, it was really fast. And that seemed really fun and exciting. There's a little bit of art history reference here. Oh, this is a drawing. This is like a preliminary sketch where the white space is the negative space. It's just roller on paper. A little drawing in the studio that inspired me to want to make this piece. But I wanted this different spacing. How the marks are paced, which is a direct reference to this artist. This is not my work. It's Neil Tironi. It's like kind of a conceptual artist from the 70s, late 60s, early 70s, and in Paris. And that's the work. Maybe she's born with it. I'll leave this up, and maybe we'll have some questions, and then if there's time, I actually have another little cycle of images that's more just informative artist works that inform my practice or that I'm interested in that I think are interesting. But maybe I'll take questions first and see if anybody has any questions. Maybe she's born with it.
It's good to, I wasn't really familiar with your process and how they were actually created. And I think that it's interesting that in your lecture, a couple of images have actually, the image of Jackson Pollock particularly, because in a lot of ways, these are action paintings. I mean,
Yeah.
they're spontaneous.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But they don't do the same thing that Pollock's work would do in
Not at
terms
all.
of like being this index or record of the artist's presence.
Right.
They're much more cool.
Yeah.
And then you've got this just cornucopia of references. You mentioned Stella, which is absolutely there, and Ellsworth Kelly is clearly haunting
Yeah.
you. Barnett Newman is clearly
Absolutely.
haunting you. You're
Yeah.
haunted by all these folks.
Yeah.
And then this last image, and the lipstick clearly, which is central here, and that gesture. Again, you have that sort of that painted,
Sure.
very simple gesture. So I don't have a really specific question, but
It's
I wonder
okay.
if you just kind of talk
Yeah.
about how do you see all of these,
Mm-hmm.
this sort of
I-
multitude of voices coming together?
I think when you use the word haunted by these artists, those artists, it's true. But those artists they're all highly specific, and I think the thing that haunts me more is modernism specifically, like not so much the individual artists, but the artists and how they function. Me being an artist here and now, trying to deal with, they could make work, and that work informs what I do, but that kind of work can't be made now. Because it's just a different context. We can't believe in that project the way they could believe in it. So that would be the haunting.
Then what that makes me think of is the fact that you chose to do a wall painting, which
Mhm.
really brings it into,
Mm-hmm.
if not postmodern, that bridging, Saul LeWitt.
Absolutely.
that-
Saul LeWitt and
the
Neil Taroni
technology,
himself.
Simply
Mm-hmm.
because it's going to go away.
Mhm.
You're not going to have that anymore. Is that, in a sense, one of those bridging efforts?
Taroni, like this is a painting, but he actually paints these right on the wall as well. And so there is this attempt at this kind of, at the time his work was read really cool as well. It was like hard-edged conceptual art in 1968. But now I think a painting like this, to me, reads really like friendly and loosey-goosey and idealistic, in this way that I can't believe. So the comparison here is like it's similar, but the mediating tool is the house roller, which is not much different than a paintbrush intrinsically, but conceptually, our minds make those as two very separate gestures. And so I'm sort of interested in, like, what's the difference between making this with a paintbrush and making it with a house roller? Like, is it really different? Like, I don't know. So maybe I'll talk a little bit about the title of the show. Maybe she's born with it. I'm sort of interested in what we can extrapolate from popular sources, what kind of information we can gain from something as simple and as common as a Maybelline ad. And I actually think that this advertisement and their slogan is super complex slogan. I think it's like, it's accessible to anybody, and yet at the same time, the ideas in it, I think, are really rich. And so I'll go into what I think those ideas are. So it poses this question. Maybe she's born with it. Maybe. or maybe it's Maybelline. And obviously, they believe that it's Maybelline. And so I try and ask myself, well, what is Maybelline to them? How does it function for us? Maybelline, in this context, I think, is artifice, right? Work, labor. You're not born with it. Like, you work hard for it. You work hard to look good, or you work hard for whatever. But I think it's weird because most people, I think, believe in the myth, particularly with art. They believe that you are born with it, that the artistic impulse, the desire to be art or make art. If you hear people talk about art, they're like, "Oh, he was always creative," you know. "Oh, he made art as a kid." Like, everyone knew he was going to be an artist. But I think that's kind of a dangerous myth, particularly when thinking about maybe someone like Jackson Pollock. How and why we can or can't believe in that kind of mythology today. It's an interesting aesthetic debate, and I think that debate is happening here, and it actually presents what I think is contradictory to most people. Most people think that talent and skill is innate, it's not nurtured, it's nature. But this advertisement very blatantly says it's not nature, it's all nurture. And in this context, it's there for sale, right?
What about labor? You spoke about the labor-intensive nature of the piece of the ledge, and then the labor-intensive
Right.
puzzle pieces.
Yeah.
And then you've also, very easily spoken about, at least in the execution of the imagery, this sort of instantaneous.
Yeah.
Almost de-skilled. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
I think people invented rollers for people that couldn't paint
Yeah.
walls very well.
Yeah.
Like me,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
talk about that for a second.
Sure. It took me. I think it's just been a long process of dealing with my relationship to labor, right? As an artist, I think in the beginning, when you're younger, you feel like you have to work hard on something for it to be good. And I think that's a misconception. It took me 5 years or something to like realize that that's a misconception, and for me to own easiness. Does that make sense? So there's one type of labor in the art ledge piece. It's very time consumptive, but there's this kind of craft reward at the end, like this sort of clean and pristine, perfectly made thing. And so I wanted to continue to investigate that impulse, but I wanted to not have any kind of real reward in terms of artistic skill. And that's where I think the puzzles really came in and satisfied that. Like, it allowed me to, like, okay, I can still indulge in my desire to, like, want to show that I worked hard, but I don't want an object that anybody can say, wow, it's so beautiful. I didn't want that. And then now I want something that can still be beautiful, but really kind of hard to claim, like that rolled X is beautiful. And I like that tension. I like to be able to do it super fast, so you can't say, well, it's great because you spent a long time on it. I want it to be great for some other reason.
So it sounds like you're talking about that kind of labor-intensive work as being actually self-indulgent.
Oh, absolutely.
And this is just a way to distance yourself.
Or
I want all my students to cover their ears during this.
negotiate. Negotiate, right? I want to negotiate. I don't necessarily, because I do still work hard, but independently in each object, right? Maybe not. So if I can find an efficient way to cover ground, to cover space that's still successful, I want to explore that as an option.
Why Thomas Kincaid?
Oh, geez. I thought I was going to get away with that. Well, Thomas Kincaid, is at that time, especially, I think it was, it was in the air. He had just had a big retrospective that was curated by Jeffrey Valance, Orange County Museum, and there was a book published, and he had already been an artist that I was thinking about really intensely, because he's amazing in terms of his structure of his practice. Super unique, super successful for what it is. Like, it's amazing to me that he's the most collected artist in America. That seems kind of intense. And his mode of production, like the amount of work that he makes and moves, like just as a product, is like, blow your mind. I mean, you guy's a billionaire as an artist. Like how, I don't know if that's ever even happened before. He might be the first artist billionaire. Now, and he doesn't sell his originals. He keeps all of his own originals. This is somebody who's totally obsessed with his own production. He loves his work so much that he won't, like, I don't think he believes anybody is even good enough to own his work. His work is so good that he can only keep it for himself. And he gets away with it. Like, he makes prints of all of his work, and it'll be the same image, but there'll be, I forget what it is. There's like 5 scales: the small scale, the middle scale, large scale, super large scale, and then there's the 100. He does. I think his lowest edition I think is 1,500, and then they go up to 10,000. And these editions sell out. There's waiting lists. There's actually I think to have the privilege to buy his work, you have to subscribe to like a Thomas Kincaid membership. You pay like yearly fees to be a member. It's called, what is it called? Living in the Light. That's what they call it. I'm not kidding. It's called Living in the Light. So anyways, I wanted to engage his practice on his terms, and one of his terms is that like he participates in this sort of commercial realm, and an aspect of his practice are these puzzles. Like, you can go to Kmart and buy a puzzle and own part of his practice, right? The imagery. It's not limited edition, but it's a part of his production, and I just wanted to, in some small way, without actually supporting him, wanted to commit to participating in his practice at some level in order just to maybe understand it better and digest it. And I got to do that. Yeah.
I'm actually an interloper here tonight from another discipline. I'm not an artist. I'm actually teaching the communication arts department.
Great, welcome.
And some of my students are here tonight, maybe feeling like interlopers as well. But this drew us, right?
Good.
We saw this and
Yeah.
said, we need to come and hear what this guy's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But something that's interesting to me about the rhetoric of this ad,
Mhm.
is that it plays with the notion of artifice and authenticity.
Right.
Which in our discipline, in communication arts, what you talked about, can this be taught? Is this just natural? That's a long-standing question in,
Yeah.
in public performance.
Yeah.
But there's also this interesting habit in rhetorical action where the authentic and the artificial keep switching places.
Mm-hmm.
So to give like a simple example of that, I'm trying to make a bridge here to what you've been talking to us about.
Mhm.
But there's a mode of speech that you could call the plain style, where you just speak in this very conversational, very approachable, very accessible,
Right.
and seemingly artless manner.
Mhm.
But it's actually very difficult to do well.
Sure.
So the artificial, trying to sound like the authentic, but actually requiring quite a lot of artifice.
Right.
Is there any of that kind of action going on in your work, where there's a kind of switcheroo?
A switcheroo. Like with the works maybe that are up here now, the X paintings?
I'm not sure.
I definitely think that I think there's 2 switcheroos, right? There's the point where, and I think the switcheroo is that it's at first not believable, and then maybe it's believable, and then it's not believable again. And then the other switcheroo is where it's believable and then not believable and then back to believable again. So there's this kind of dual action, right? Where, and I actually don't. I embrace not claiming one decision or the other. I I would hope that it would stay in this kind of cyclical motion where it continues to question itself and ask itself, both the object itself, and for me as an artist engaged with the work, and for an audience member who's trying to place it. If I could just keep the debate going and keep that tension in an object, I'm satisfied. Yeah. But it's difficult to talk about because there is a desire for people to want to say, well, what specifically does it mean? Which way are you going? Like, are these cynical or are these pure idealism? And I would just say, yeah.
I'm still kind of interested in unpacking the labor question maybe a little bit more.
Mhm.
I think we maybe briefly talked about like Adorno and his sort of conception of art as
Mhm.
almost like the last remaining or like non-productive space in
Mhm.
life.
Mhm.
And I feel like I just took a group of students to the Art Institute of Honor Week. Of course, like most people's first reaction is like, oh, like, you know, they just spat this thing out there, and I'm sure a lot of students reacted to your work. And
Right.
too. And
Sure.
I think that's a really rich dialogue that's especially prevalent right now in contemporary art, as far as I can tell, about, you know, like showing the amount of labor that you've done, or
Yeah.
showing that you've tricked us into
Right.
thinking that you've done a certain amount of labor.
Yeah.
And so I guess I'm interested in like how you're continuing to think about that as a value in avant-garde art.
Mm-hmm. Jeez. Well,
And like why it necessarily
I think-
continues to now. Still,
Yeah.
like, we're still dealing with this.
I think with art production, we're talking about useless objects, potentially. Let's pretend there's no art market and it's not functioning in that way. But in an ideal world for artists, in like where we're just talking about art, we're making it, and we're not worried so much about the market. That original function has no real use, right? And I think it's that space that allows for criticality, and that's what's necessary. It's difficult to be critical about or to use an object that has this sort of clear-cut function, because there's no real debate about its legitimacy as an object. It's just legitimate because we need it. We need a broom. Broom sweeps. You don't have to question its presence. But with art objects, that comes into question. And I think there's always going to be a larger segment of the population that's going to say, that just sees, this is useless. Like, what a waste. Why are we making this? And sometimes maybe the work is useless. But I think it's at least a worthwhile endeavor, because it allows for the potential for criticality to occur. Why is there this large population that can dismiss it? It gets into weird kind of like social economic questions that I don't like to talk about in public.
I made Josh recently watch. Have you seen Chuck Close on the Colbert Report?
I have not seen that, no.
You should watch it because
I will.
Well, I mean, obviously, when Chuck Close comes out, who apparently is a really big fan of Stephen Colbert. Which
Mhm.
is interesting.
Mhm.
So, Stephen Colbert's first comment in his character of playing the part of everyman, or at least what we think everyman is,
Mhm.
says like, "I like your paintings because I can tell what they are."
Right.
It's the first thing that he says. And
Right.
he kind of goes, and then later on he says something like, "In enjoying your paintings, are we just like helping your OCD habits?"
Right,
Something like
right.
that. But I think that whole interview points to the fact that most Americans can easily understand a work like his.
Yeah.
It's valuable because of the labor.
Yeah.
And therefore, I think your work is nice because as soon as you see it, you have to think about, well, why is he making that?
Yeah.
Instead of
Yeah.
just spending that time.
Well, I think that's the danger of a practice like Chuck Close, because it's too easy to make it difficult. What's really difficult is when you make it too easy, right? Like it's a weird thing, and I actually think it's true. Like, it's really easy to like Chuck Close, and it's just because of the labor. It's just because of the time spent. But that's a weird thing to fetishize, right? A weird way to attribute value.
Going back to your earlier comment about pragmatic objects
Mm-hmm.
and the need for non-pragmatic objects. So a few years back, I want to say maybe 10 years ago, Annie Hamilton got quoted in the New York Times. And for those of you who don't know Annie Hamilton, she does these elaborate installations. There's one that's the entire floor of the gallery is covered in 3 inches of pennies,
Mm-hmm.
and that's covered in honey, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And there's just no possible way you can to do anything with that. And what she said about that, she was quoting Leotard.
Mm-hmm.
She says that it's a critique of performativity. And it's the only space that's left to question why we do what we do.
Sure. Yeah. Any other questions, thoughts, comments?
You guys are all good, that you get it, you don't have any questions whatsoever from Ben about what he's presented or the work that you've seen in the gallery? No one? You guys are smart.
We can expect all of you to write 3 or 4 paragraphs when you come to class on Monday.
Either that or so profoundly lost.
Well, I did provide, I don't have the copies, but I'm going to give it to Josh. I read a lot, and a lot of people are asking me for I have a list of books that, they're like my favorite books. And I'm asked for this list all the time, so I'm going to give a copy to Josh, and if anybody wants a copy of that, it's like, it's my key, right? It's my, like, 14 essential books to have to read. You can get it from Josh, if anybody's interested.
We still got a little bit of time.
Okay.
If you want to do.
Maybe we do the fast, fun, easy. That's what that's what I called it, I think. Fast, fun, easy. And slideshow. All right. How do I get to? Dun 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 dun. Start slideshow from beginning. From beginning. I know there's a way to do it.
Is it this button right here? That one?
Okay. Okay, random images, fun, fast, easy. I'm just gonna go through them fast. If anybody wants to like stop and say, "Hey, wait, what's that?" Just say that. Okay. So these are just random artists. This is like just images I have on my desktop today, and I just put them into a thing. I'll say who they are. It's Wade Guyton, another ex-painter. He's a fellow ex-painter. There's a few of us out there. That's Heimo Zobernig. That's probably 5 by 5 feet square, and they're super delicious in person. He's an Austrian painter. I think that's Rick Ratir Venetia, or it's Jorge Pardo. This is on Kuara, and I don't know if you guys, but he's one of my all-time favorite artists. Like, I just think that this whole debate that we're talking about, like, he just answers that question right in his practice. So cold, beautiful. It's another Wade Guyton painting. Anna Mendieta, performance artist from the 70s that accidentally fell out a window. Scott Burton, artist from the 80s that just makes these they're kind of functional, but they're art. You know, I mean, he placed them in our context, but they're furniture, they're additioned, they're great. More on Kuara. Morandi, I have the softest spot for Morandi. I actually think Ankuara and Morandi are like exactly the same in my mind. They're the same. Another Morandi. Same installation, but people using it. This is Tira Venetia for sure. My Toupere, super into this artist right now. these are her paintings. And she makes these just geometric abstract paintings that are super great, but she places them in these kind of like larger installations, and she has this whole narrative that she's actually a literature background, and she's writing this story about an all-woman commune in the 60s, I think, and these are supposed to be these paintings that they made on that commune. So she really plays with narrative in this interesting way. It's Martin Boyce still playing with modernist narratives. It's an Eames chair that he turned into a mobile. This is just a broken chair, but kind of like a Calder, but it's Warhol. So what? Franz Klein. I definitely think about him with the roller paintings. I didn't show any of the more, well, I guess I showed one, like real gestural one. More Scott Burton, more Ankuwara, Alan McCollum. Can't help but think about him all the time. And Reinhardt, Prince. I don't know why, it's only a small image. It's just all image I could find. Anna Mendieta, Thomas Roof. Blanking on the name. Huh? No, not Ellsworth Kelly. The German guy. Imi Knoebel. Sorry. Imi Knoebel. Ed Reinhardt. Again. I love these early ones. These like these transition ones, like these like high-key blue ones before he just does black. Like, I love these like early moments in artists' careers where you see like them working things out. Oh, all black one. More Alan McCollum. God, that guy's crazy. He's just crazy. He's crazy. He makes images like 122 at a time. He makes them engross. Just and it takes him like a second to make 122 images. So that's one of the reasons I just like him all. I have to think about him, like, because he'll make a million images like in 20 minutes, just by point and click. And
Really, he's in the most recent Art 21.
yes, yeah.
Show him doing this
Yeah.
process on the computer. So people doing graphic design might be interested in this too. Where
Yeah.
He's got this little catalog of shapes, and then he sort of like has this system for combining all of them to just basically create an infinite amount of their shapes.
Yeah. I like this idea of endless or infinite, right? They're very close, but very different. Chris Wool. Duchamp. Have to have that on your desktop. You never know when you're gonna need it. Sherry Levine. Cindy Sherman. Mondrian. This is more Heimo Zobernig, that early painting. This is an early piece by him I just thought was great. It's an art fair booth, and he just made these. So like that table there is probably actually a wall, one of the art fair walls that he turned into a table, and this is just an empty shelf, an empty thing for books and magazines. But these are actually sculptures. He really plays with your expectation of what you're coming there to see. I can't help it. I have to think about it because I forget what the value is. $500 million. Like the same way I have to think about a Kincaid practice, I have to think about Hearst, and I have to think about this piece, especially that he collaboratively bought his own work as an investment. Like it's the strangest thing. I wish that was really what the work was about because that's interesting. More Heimo Zobernig. God, they're so stupid, and that's why they're great. Like, this is actually collaborative with Galen Gerber, so it's just a gray square, and then he just put blue tape, made this X, and then just knifed some white paint on. Done. That's him again. Had to include that. Again. Can't help it. Mo Bachner. Actually, I like this piece. I just like it. Like, talk about locating space, like setting up a boundary. Like, we are exactly like 5 inches in this, 5 feet in that way, 5 feet in that way. Like that's it. Very clear piece. Mosé, Olivier Mosé. He's totally one of my favorite artists. He made this painting right here for 10 years. It's 100 centimeters square, and he just made that painting again and again and again and again. It's the only painting he made. And then in like 1980, he just stopped. And then now he has this kind of like he just makes really colorful, simple abstract works, all geometric abstraction. But for 10 years, he did this. There's another one. Cindy Sherman, Rand Reinhardt, Moran Kuara. I don't know if you know so much about, but the thing that really sucked me into this work, and it's, when people are like, why is that work good? I think when you start understanding his whole practice, that he custom makes these little boxes and puts a newspaper in there, and you realize that he's doing this every day, and he's been making these paintings every day since 1967. Like, I don't know if it's like great or totally depressing. More Wade Guyton, more Heimo Zobernig. I don't know why the small de Kooning, there it is. Large Gunther Fork. This is one of like kind of out of pace with all the other images, but I include it like because I feel like this is something you can get closer to believing. But I don't know if you go to art fairs, but like if you go to art fairs, you just see 1,000 of these all over the place. And it's like I wonder like that might be more cynical than the cynical work, right? Because you can believe in this. You can be like, oh, that's beautiful. The colors are beautiful. Blah, blah, it's all gestural and very painterly, and they're all very, very beautiful. But the meaning really changes when you're walking down these aisles and you see like one after another, after another, after another, after another, and you realize like he is just churning this stuff out. That's a younger artist, Sterling Ruby. I'm really into him. Weird photographs, weird paintings. These are mammoth. These make my paintings look small. These things are like, I don't know, 20 by 30 feet long. They're huge monster paintings. They're all made with spray paint. But they look like Rothkos. That's what I like to think of them as, like kind of like a contemporary graffiti Rothko. This is Aaron Curry. He's just someone I look at. Oy. That's jeez. Kelly Walker, and he just takes these images, and that's toothpaste on the image. So he puts the image, he just draws on a flatbed scanner with toothpaste, and then he puts the two images together, and then he prints them up large. So again, like, you definitely can't really believe in toothpaste as like an Apollic gesture. And I just love that, like, just toothpaste. He uses chocolate. Oh, here. This is chocolate, where he actually, so he scans the image of, so he'll smear the chocolate on the flatbed, and he'll scan that image, and then he'll make a silk screen of that image of smeared chocolate, and then actually pull chocolate through the screen. So it's this weird, like, double. It's more Sterling Ruby. Oh, there's another one. That was it. That's it. It's end. It's over.
Thanks so much, Ben.
Yep, thank you.